Well, hey, good morning, everybody. Here we are in beautiful downtown. Well, it's not really downtown, but Athens. We're in Athens, and you see the tourists are all climbing up the Acropolis. I did that once in 2006. A very light, rainy day when I went up there. Beautiful. If you see the Acropolis is part of a cliff, like a plateau, and then the ancient Greeks built kind of on top of that. And up there is one of the most famous buildings in the world, the Parthenon, which is dedicated to Athena, which we'll get to today. All right, so we read about Zeus and Hera, his wife, jealous wife, and Hephaestus, the nice son of the god of the smiths and fire and things like that. So now we're going to move on, and it's kind of apropos to talk about Aphrodite, because goddess of love and beauty, because this weekend is Valentine's Day. And as you know, her son is Eros, or in Rome, he's referred to as Cupid. Cupid. Okay. Anyway, so let's get on with it. Here is Aphrodite, page 30. We're going to do a couple. I think we're going to do Aphrodite and Ares and Athena today. Okay. Aphrodite, the beautiful goddess of love, was the only Olympian who had neither mother nor father. Nobody knew from where she had come. The west wind had first seen her in the pearly light of dawn as she rose out of the sea on a cushion of foam. She floated lightly over the gentle waves and was so lovely to behold that the wind almost lost his breath. With soft puffs, he blew her to the flowering island of Cythera, where the three Graces welcomed her ashore. The three Graces, goddesses of beauty, became her attendants. They dressed her in shimmering garments, bedecked her with sparkling jewels, and placed her in a golden chariot drawn by white doves. Then they led her to Olympus, where all the gods rejoiced in her beauty, seated her on a golden throne, and made her one of them. Zeus was afraid that the gods would fight over the hand of Aphrodite, and to prevent it, he quickly chose a husband for her. He gave her to Hephaestus, the steadiest of the gods, and he, who could hardly believe his good luck, used all his skill to make the most lavish jewels for her. He made her a girdle of finely wrought gold and wove magic into the filigree work. That was not very wise of him, for when she wore her magic girdle, no one could resist her, and she was all too irresistible already. Aphrodite had a mischievous little son whose name was Eros, and in his Roman name is Cupid. He darted about with a bow and a quiver full of arrows. They were arrows of love, and he delighted in shooting them into the hearts of unwary victims. Whoever was hit by one of his arrows fell head over heels in love with the first person he saw, while Eros laughed mockingly. Once a year, Aphrodite returned to Cythera and dived into the sea from which she had come. Sparkling and young, she rose from the water as dewy fresh as on the day when she had first been seen. She loved gaiety and glamour and was not at all pleased at being the wife of sooty, hard-working Hephaestus. She would rather have had his brother Ares for her husband. All right, so now we know how beautiful Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus. She didn't really want to be, but Hephaestus was so nice. Well, she liked Ares, so let's find out about that. Ares, Hephaestus's brother. Ares, god of war, was tall and handsome, but vain, and as cruel as his brother Hephaestus was kind. Makes you kind of wonder what kind of person or goddess is Aphrodite if she likes a cruel guy. She likes this cruel guy, even though especially he's handsome. Okay, so he's handsome, but he's cruel. Not worth it. All right, anyway, let's move on. Eris, the spirit of strife, was his constant companion. Eris was sinister and mean, and her greatest joy was to make trouble. She had a golden apple that was so bright and shiny, everybody wanted to have it. When she threw it among friends, their friendship came to a rapid end. When she threw it among enemies, war broke out. For the golden apple of Eris was an apple of discord. Discord is when people don't get along. When Ares heard the clashing of arms, any arms like swords and shields and things like that, he grinned with glee, put on his gleaming helmet, and leaped into his war chariot, brandishing his sword like a torch. He rushed into the thick of battle, not caring who won or lost, as long as much blood was shed. A vicious crowd followed at his heels, carrying with them pain, panic, famine, and oblivion. Once in a while, Ares himself was wounded. He was immortal, but he could not bear to suffer pain and screamed so loudly that he could be heard for miles. Then he would run home to Olympus, where Zeus, in disgust, called him the worst of his children and told him to stop his howling. His wounds, treated with the ointment of the gods, quickly healed, and Ares returned as good as ever and seated himself on his throne, tall and handsome and boastful. He's bragging all the time. The plume on his golden helmet nodding proudly. Aphrodite admired him for his splendid looks, but none of the other gods were fond of him, least of all his half-sister Athena. She loathed his vain strutting and senseless bloodshed. Interesting. It tells you a little bit about what some Greeks thought of warfare. Some of the Greeks thought war was not the best answer. All right, so we move on to Athena now. Now, Athena, remember what I said about the Acropolis behind me. Athena was the patron goddess of Athens, and you can kind of hear the name, Athens, Athena. So it goes together. And they erected the Parthenon, which is the most important building behind me on the Acropolis. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, was the favorite child of Zeus. She had sprung fully grown out of her father's head. Her mother was Metis, goddess of prudence. Remember the first wife of Zeus? The first wife of Zeus. He depended on her, for he needed her wise counsel. But Mother Earth warned him that were Metis to bear him a son, this son would dethrone him as Zeus had dethroned Cronus, his father, who had dethroned his own father, Uranus. This must not happen, thought Zeus, but he could not do without her advice. So he decided to swallow Metis, his first wife. Slyly, he proposed that they play a game of changing shapes, and Metis, forgetting her prudence, playfully turned herself into all kinds of animals, big and small. Just as she had taken on the shape of a little fly, Zeus opened wide his mouth, took a deep breath, and zip, he swallowed the fly. Ever after, Metis sat in his head and guided him from there. Now it happened that Metis was going to have a daughter, and she sat inside Zeus's head, hammering out a helmet and weaving a splendid robe for the coming child. Soon Zeus began to suffer from pounding headaches and cried out in agony. All the gods came running to help him, and skilled Hephaestus grasped his tools and split open his father's skull. Out sprang Athena, wearing the robe and the helmet, her gray eyes flashing. Thunder roared, and the gods stood in awe. Athena's constant companion was Nike. Nike, yes, the shoes. Nike, the spirit of victory, the spirit of victory. So the guys who created the shoe company Nike, when they were thinking of a name, they thought about Greek mythology. They thought about Nike, the spirit of victory. And that made sense to them. They're saying, yeah, the spirit of victory. If you wear our shoes, you will be victorious. There's a lot of things like that where we find out that the Greeks kind of labeled and named the things that we do today. So Athena's constant companion was Nike, the spirit of victory. With Nike at her side, Athena led armies, but only those that fought for just causes. In time of peace, she stood behind the artists of Greece and taught them the fine and useful arts. She had great pride in her own skill at the loom and the potter's wheel. The loom is when you weave things, like weave tapestries that have patterns and pictures. And of course, the loom, I'm sorry, the potter's wheel is where you put clay and you spin it and you make pots and things. But was happy to see her pupils excel as long as they showed her proper respect. Remember, the gods are about being honored. You know, they need to be honored by people. One of her pupils was Arachne, a simple country girl who was wonderfully skilled at the loom. People came from far and wide to admire her weavings. Stupidly, she boasted that she had learned nothing from Athena. Indeed, that she, Arachne, was better than the goddess. That hurt Athena's pride. Disguised as an old woman, she went to the young girl and tried to talk sense to her. Your work is beautiful, she said, but why compare yourself with the gods? Why not be contented to be the best among mortals? Let the goddess Athena herself come and measure her skill against mine, Arachne answered haughtily. Angrily, Athena threw off her disguise and stood before the girl in all her glory. Vain girl, she said, you may have your wish. Sit down at your loom and let us compete. Athena wove the most beautiful tapestry ever seen. Every thread and knot was perfect, and the colors sparkled. It pictured the Olympian gods in all their glory and majesty. Arachne's tapestry was also beautifully woven. Athena herself had to admit that the girl's craftsmanship was flawless. But what kind of picture had she woven? An irreverent scene making fun of Zeus and his wives, you know, because Zeus has a lot of girlfriends, Zeus is a cheater, you know, he cheats. It's just what he is. In her wrath, the goddess tore the tapestry to shreds and struck the girl with the shuttle. Immediately, Arachne felt her head shrink almost to nothing. Her nimble fingers change into long, spindly legs. Athena had turned her into a spider. Vainglorious girl, go on and spin your thread and weave your empty net forever, said Athena to Arachne, the spider. And that's why we call spiders arachnids, right? Don't we? The scientific name for spiders is arachnids, after Arachne. Scientists went back to ancient Greece again and used one of their words. Athena was a just goddess, and she could be very stern. She knew that the gods were great only as long as they were properly worshipped by mortals. Athena was very fond of a certain city in Greece, and so was her uncle Poseidon. Can you guess what that city is? The one I'm in now, Athens. Both of them claimed the city. And after a long quarrel, you know, they fought over it, argued. They decided that the one who should or who could give it the finest gift should have it. So if you give them a gift and I give them the gift, they judge what gift they like better. Leading the processions of citizens, the two gods mounted the Acropolis. The Acropolis, right behind me, you see it. The flat-topped rock that crowned the city. Poseidon struck the cliff with his trident and a spring welled up. Wow, a spring is good. Having a spring, you know, the water coming up, that's awesome. That's an important thing for every city. The people marveled, but the water was salty as the sea that Poseidon ruled and not very useful. Then Athena gave the city her gift. She planted an olive tree in a crevice on the rock. It was the first olive tree the people had ever seen. Athena's gift was judged the better of the two, for it gave food because of the olives, oil because of olive oil, and wood because it's a tree. And the city was hers. From her beautiful temple on top of the Acropolis, Athena watched over Athens, her city, with the wise owl, her bird, on her shoulder. And under her leadership, the Athenians grew famous for their arts and crafts. All right, and then tomorrow we'll read about Poseidon. Okay, so, and that's her uncle, Uncle Poseidon. All right, so you got to learn a little bit of mythological history of Greece and the Acropolis, which is very real behind me. And I hope you visit someday. I really do, because obviously, you know, I'm not really here now, but don't tell anybody. But I have been here before. So anyway, you guys have a great weekend, I think, or no, maybe it's Monday today. I think today's Monday. So have a great week. All right, take care, guys. Have a nice time. Be fun. Be happy. Do what your parents want.